Good morning, my beautiful babes and babettes. And by the time I upload this, it will probably be afternoon, my beautiful babes and babettes. I just demolished my elbow on the door frame, ow, but I am still your resident active advocate, and no, I didn't skip yesterday because I went to bed too late and was too tired to do anything yesterday. What are you talking about? However, today, now that I have read, and it's pretty, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, we get to talk more about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I am better grounded to do so, and it feels good to know things. It's awesome. Please go read the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It's not very long, and it's pretty. I'm going to do a series on it when I'm done this series. So you can either go and read it for yourself now, or you can wait until that happens. It's going to be a while because I am about halfway through the TRC, which you should also go and read, or just listen to me read it to you, because that's also fun. But yeah, it could be a while before we get to, I'm calling it the undrip in my head because I'm a jackass, and that's awesome. So now that I've read that, I feel a little better equipped to tackle the TRC, which is a very long and very in-depth and very pretty document. I can't get over how awesome these things are. Seriously, it's actually been very enlightening to read this stuff, and I'm happy I've done so. So today, we pick up on call to action number 46. I'm going to maximize my document. Hello, you are looking at the top of my head. How fun. All right. So this remains under the heading of Royal Proclamations and, the Covenant of Reconciliation. Okay. So that's the heading that we're under right now. However, this time in this video, we are going to be switching headings quite often. So be prepared for that. All right. Call to action number 46. We call upon the parties to the Indian Residential Schools Settlement Agreement to develop and sign a covenant of reconciliation that would identify principles for working collaboratively to advance reconciliation in Canadian society, and that would include, but not be limited to, 1. Reaffirmation of the parties' commitment to reconciliation. That's plural possessive, so various parties' commitment. All right. 2. Repudiation of concepts used to justify European sovereignty over Indigenous lands and peoples, such as the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius, and the reformation of laws, government structures, and policies within their respective institutions that continue to rely on such concepts. All right, I'm going to maximize my camera for a sec. There we go. Just for a refresher for anyone who needs it, the doctrine of discovery states that the white Europeans who settled North and South America were the people to, quote, discover this land. I reiterate, no one with white skin discovered jack about either of these continents. Now, the Truth and Reconciliation Commitment, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is specifically a Canadian document, but the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples goes into laws that are based in other countries as well. So between the two continents, how the settlers, such as myself, can get along with the Indigenous peoples who already live here. And the doctrine of terra nullius, so basically void earth, stated that we believed in coming here, there was no one here, that this land was uninhabited, and psst, even though it wasn't, we kind of stuck to that belief for some reason. Because if the people here are not considered people, which they weren't for a really, really long time, then we get to lay claim to the land and to the resources. So that's what those mean. Oh gosh, the white supremacists, they must have a ball dissecting these things and trying to make some mental gymnastics sense of how these things make sense, because they don't. All right, moving on, moving right along, looking at the top of my head, hurrah. Okay. Okay, 3, getting back into the same point. Full adoption and implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as the framework for reconciliation. Like I say, this document is very, 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 very pretty, and it speaks my language, and I speak its language, and I really, really like that I speak its language, but even though my knowledge is grounded in it now, we're going to actually talk about it later. All right, so look forward to that. Number 4, support for the renewal or establishment of treaty relationships based on principles of mutual recognition, mutual respect, and shared responsibility for maintaining those relationships into the future. FYI, treaties do not change. Treaties that were made in 1607, even as far back as that, and I'm talking about the year in which Disney set the film version of Pocahontas, which is a very problematic movie. But even, 400 years back, the treaties that were made then, if there were treaties made then, those treaties are still in effect. Treaties do not change. All right? 5, enabling those excluded from the settlement agreement to sign on to the Covenant of Reconciliation. That's fairly self-explanatory, I think, although I should probably read both of those documents myself. All right, 6, enabling additional parties to sign on to the Covenant of Reconciliation. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. Oh, because does that tick me off? All right. Call to action number 47. We call upon federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to repudiate concepts used to justify European sovereignty over Indigenous peoples and lands, such as the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius, and to reform these laws, government policies, and litigation strategies that continue to rely on such concepts. The fact that we remain mentally stuck in the 1600s and earlier, come on, it's been 400 years. We need to get beyond this stuff and actually move forward as a unit of people supporting one another, and especially those who have seized power, resources, land, money. We need to work for the people whom, up to this point, we have systemically and legally oppressed. Okay? That's what needs to happen, and that's what the TRC is talking about, in large part. All right. New heading. Settlement Agreement Parties and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which is pretty. That's not part of the heading, but I'm adding it anyway. All right, call to action number 48. We call upon the church parties to the settlement agreement and all other faith groups and interfaith social justice groups in Canada who have not already done so to formally adopt and comply with the principles, norms, and standards of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a framework for reconciliation. This would include, but not be limited to, the following commitments. 1, ensuring that their institutions, policies, programs, and practices comply with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Yep. 2, respecting Indigenous peoples' right to self-determination in spiritual matters, including the right to practice, develop, and teach their own spiritual and religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies, consistent with Article 12:1 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. As I say, we will talk about it, but not yet. Okay? I think you can probably tell by the kind of tone in which I am reading these that, by the way, these haven't happened yet. And I don't know whether I see any signs of them happening in the near future. Hopefully within my lifetime, and that is what we are working for. All right, 3, engaging in ongoing public dialogue and actions, to support the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. In other words, we need to talk about it. Thank you. Number 4, issuing a statement no later than March 31st, 2016, from all religious denominations and faith groups as to how they will implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. P.S. That hasn't happened yet either. At least not with the Catholics. All right? And coming out of the Catholic Church myself, I was raised in the Catholic Church, not a Catholic anymore. I feel I have the right to say, hurry it up. Come on. Get with the 21st century. Let's go. All right? And I say that in a joking way. I don't mean it as a joke. You know, this ticks me off, which is why I continue to make videos about the residential school abuses. Yeah, it's so wrong what the church is doing, or rather what they are not doing at the moment. Come on, you can do better. Moral authority? Well, then use it. Do better. Call to action number 49. We call upon all religious denominations and faith groups who have not already done so to repudiate concepts used to justify European sovereignty over Indigenous lands and peoples, such as the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius. This jumps off the previous point. I think I've said enough. All right, new heading and our last point for today, which is unfortunate because it's like the first point in the heading. So I will give you a little primer on Monday because, yeah, today's Friday. I'll give you a little primer on Monday to bring you up to speed. We might even reread this one, but I won't give a dialogue on it. Or monologue, whatever. All right, new heading. Equity for Aboriginal people in the legal system. This one's important. They're all important, okay? Anyway, 50. In keeping with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, we call upon the federal government, in collaboration with Aboriginal organizations, to fund the establishment of Indigenous law institutions for the development, use, and understanding of Indigenous laws and access to justice in accordance with the unique cultures of Aboriginal peoples in Canada. All right, I'm going to bring up my camera just because that's the last one. Okay. As I have hopefully made clear in previous segments on this, on the TRC, Indigenous cultures throughout Canada and America and also South America, but as I say, this is a Canadian document, the cultures throughout this country have differed and continue to differ greatly. In Canada, there are at least 500 different Indigenous groups. So just in the same way as Canada and America don't have the same laws, for example, Canada doesn't have the death penalty. Some states in America still do. Why, I don't know, but anyway. In similar fashion, different Indigenous nations will have different laws, okay? What this particular call to action is stating is that those laws, as separate entities to Canadian law, okay, they need to be respected as self-contained and separate entities, and also that we, white Canadians, need to learn from these laws that were in place long before we got here. And I've talked about this before, but I feel that it bears reiteration. The Iroquois Confederacy, okay, which was or is still a conglomeration of nations on the east coast and then coming more towards the center of the continent. between both Canada and America, okay, the Iroquois Confederacy passed between both countries. They basically created the American Constitution as it currently stands. And the Fathers of Confederation got a lot of advice from Indigenous leaders who they didn't recognize on how to write these laws in the first place. And I am not the first person to say that American history is more or less fraught with examples of how the people did not live up to their constitution. And the same is true of Canada, by the way. You know, we have these very idealistic laws, and a lot of the time we ignore them in the name of, you know, desires, in the name of money, in the name of the game of one-upmanship, as Alan Watts, my favorite philosopher, would call it. So that's not okay. And the faster we realize that that is not morally okay, the better off we are. Hurrah. I'm not saying that all Indigenous nations were or are perfect, okay? It's just that I'm saying we should, as settlers, take the opportunity that is staring us in the face to get to learn about these other cultures and to see where our own flaws lie in relation to those peoples, and not only how we can heal our relationship with the various Indigenous nations throughout this country, but also what they can teach us about ourselves and how we can improve within ourselves. Because opening up dialogue, that's a really important aspect, not only of advocacy, but I think just of being a human being. You know, we're a social species. We need other people. And it's my personal belief that we don't just need other people who look, think, speak, act, believe everything in the same way that we do. That's a little narrow for me, anyway. But this is coming from an avowed leftist and socialist. So that's just me. But I don't know. I think it's beneficial to learn from other people. And especially if you have no idea where their worldview comes from, because then, you know, you're expanding your own knowledge, and that's always a good thing. Because there's always advantages to getting smarter. I don't see very much advantage other than the illusion of safety and security in sitting in the same box throughout your life. Either make the box bigger or throw the box away. Recycle, okay? We recycle here. Yes, we did. Recycle the box or make it bigger. You know, wherever your comfort zone lies. But the reason why I'm making this series is to potentially open up these dialogues. You know, that's an important thing to me. And I hope it's important to the people who are watching. And I'm not saying that I am the final word on this. Good gods, do not consider me the final word on this. If you consider me the final word on this, you're not looking far enough. As I have said before, go to people you don't know. Go to people you haven't talked to before, and especially the people who have been adversely affected by colonialism and by the settlers. And, you know, get to know their world, get to know their perspective. Because I am not here to give a voice to the voiceless. They have voices, okay? But it's our opportunity, and it is within our power to get to learn to listen. If it is the only superpower I have to ask you to go and listen, that's enough power for me. That's awesome. And I'm willing to use it. This is my weapon, and I'm not afraid to use it. So that is our talk for today. And I will see y'all on Monday. I am so sorry I didn't do a video yesterday. That was me being lazy and tired and stressed. I apologize for that, but I will see you all on Monday to continue talking about this lovely, lovely stuff, because I take weekends off. So have yourselves a lovely, lovely weekend. Read the TRC and read the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. That's a mouthful. I call it the NDRIP for short because, as I say, I am an asshole. All right, see y'all later. Bye! Mwah.